Giovanni.
Hello, how are you
Hi,
today?
I'm fine. How are you? Where are you?
Doing it. I'm in New York, in
Me
Flatbush,
too.
the
In the
best
East
place on
Village.
earth.
Where
There we
where are
go.
you?
I'm in Flatbush, in Brooklyn.
Okay, so there's a reason for us to be on Zoom. Not
Yeah,
like we
thanks
could
a
just
bit.
walk out of our apartments and be like, well, there you are.
Of course not. But now here we are.
Here we are.
This is the Next Best Series podcast. And today, of course, I'm joined by the star of the Penguin, Deirdre O'Connell. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome.
I think the character of Frances is so fascinating because on paper could have easily just been a one-dimensional role. You're just playing the Penguin's mom. I'm sure as an actor, getting the opportunity to work on a project of this scale is very alluring, especially at this point in your career. But, working with someone like Lauren LaFranc, who is very interested in exploring these characters on a molecular level, I'm curious, what was it like giving layers and adding far more to Francis as a character than what would be expected of a normal genre show like this?
Um, uh, it's such a good question. It is such a good question because the way that I learned about the you could not read all the scripts. You had to
Mhm.
decide that you were in or out before you got to read all the scripts. Now, what is this? Some
Wow.
sort of a crazy game they're playing with your mind? Yes. Um, they were just so careful to not let any information out. So
Mhm.
it was kind of a nuts feeling. It makes you kind of crazy. So you're like, so I don't get to know what's going to happen to her, and so I'm signing on to kind of the version that you described, although the writing from the very beginning and the writing of that show did not change very much over the year
Mhm.
we worked on it. But the writing of the first, I think I got to read 3 episodes. So the writing of the first 3 episodes was really great writing, and it was really interesting. But it could have just stopped there. That it's kind of the very fun to do trope of the mom who has withheld a certain amount of love, the mom who is running the show from underneath, the mom who has dementia. There were a lot of cool things about the mom in the first 3 episodes. So I was already like very excited about it and attracted to it. It wasn't until I was already I don't think I'd had a camera test with Colin yet, but I watched Colin's performance in Batman and just felt very strongly like whatever is going on to honor that performance, whatever 8 hours of television people are going to try to make to say, let's build a world around that performance. I felt like I wanted to be in on that. I felt like there was something some lightning in a bottle that he had caught that
Mhm.
was going to be hopefully I could catch a little bit of it. So I knew that, and I knew that the rating of those, but I didn't know anything else. And I was kind of like, and I was friends with Craig Zobel, and he's the one that kind of talked me into it. He was just, and because Craig was doing it, and Craig is so not a comic book director,
Yeah.
there was something about like, oh, we're layering in a kind of reality and a kind of operatic mythic quality that comic books have together. There's going to be this effort to make this hybrid, and I that was interesting. So, but the point is that then after I was well in, I think I was having like costume fittings and Lauren was like, so do you want to let's have a meeting. So I sat down with Lauren. I met her for the first time, and she said, okay, well, I'll describe to you what happens. And I'm just going to tell you the story of it. I'm just going to sit here and tell you the story of it. And she sat and told me the story of it. It took her about an hour. She just laid out the tale of Francis and Oz and I, at a certain point, thought she was kidding. I, at a certain point, could not believe that what I had thought was going to be this delicious, brownie of a part had turned into this epic, huge birthday cake covered with all kinds of perverse awfulness. And at one point I started laughing and I said, well, and then do I get to do that too? And she's like, yep, you get to do. And then and she described, you know, the scene in the bathtub, and she described the ending, and as she described what had happened, what their backstory was, and what had happened with the kids, and I was really gobsmacked. I was one of those times where you're like, and I said to her, I've done a lot of this stuff in my sweet short life, and I know it always changes. And if I really get to shoot all this, if this really gets to be what we make, I'll be amazed. But I'm putting myself in your hands, and it was what we got to make. It was exactly what we got to make.
And it's fascinating dynamic. I think I will talk more about, Frances and Oz. I find it funny how Victor comes in and that's almost like the son she lost, but more so the relationship that I found the most unique in Frances' life is the whole section of the series where she's interacting with Sophia, who they both
Yeah.
had this understanding of one another about both being wronged by Oz in a way, and that this bond, there's this mutual respect. I mean, also Cristin Milioti is just fantastic in the series. I wonder what it was like, if you could go into exploring that dynamic between you two.
Cristin and I have known each other for a long time because we're both theater nerds, theater dweebs. So we've done a lot of theater. So I've been her fan since she was a young actress, and so we've known each other a long time. And so we would see each other in the hallway. I mean, we had nothing together. So once in a while I would see her walk by in some amazing, like, red fur flower of a dress and be like, whoa. And Frances was always pretty envious of her clothes. But we were both really looking forward to that scene, and we knew it was coming because I think we had gotten those late scripts. So we knew we had a scene, and we knew it was like the moment when we got to look right at each other and sort of speak the truth. And it was also a moment when Frances, like, I felt like because of all the pressure, like, wakes up completely. And is back to being the smartest person in the room, which was what she always had been in her life until she has this dementia. So suddenly she's like back and not to be messed with. And of course, the way Lewy body dementia works, it's quite sudden, the shifts. It's not quite like Alzheimer's where there's a that's how you are, that's how your brain works. There's a lot of shifting that goes on, and that happens in that scene. But anyways, because of it was a cluster FUCK of stuff that had to do with weather, it had to do with the upcoming strike, it had to do with, we were shooting episode, I think 2 or 3, and suddenly they didn't have a location outside, and we were cover set, and we were in episode 7, 6, 7. Nothing of that episode had been shot at all. Kevin Bray, God bless him, hadn't even started work. And they called me, I think it was in the morning, and said, I know it was the night before. It was the night before. And I was not in New York. Can you get back to shoot the scene with Cristin in episode 7 in the morning? Like, the scene with Cristin in episode 7 in the morning? Well, send me the scene. And look at the scene. It was like, holy shit. So, of course, the answer was yes. The work of getting to New York City was pretty hilarious. The trains had all left. The trains that could get me in that night had all left by the time they decided that that's what we were going to do. I ended up in a train station finding a woman whose name, oddly enough, was Eve, asking her how much she would charge me to get me to New York City. She gave me a price and said, raise it. I've got a TV network paying for this. He raised it, and I said, let's go to New York City. So I got in her car, and we drove for 3 hours while I sat in the backseat and memorized those lines. And I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be able to talk to you. I'm back here just talking to myself and talk to myself. Then I got in late that night, and as you know, I had a very precise dialect in that show, and so I had to have a Zoom meeting with the dialect coach because Oz and my dialects matched exactly, and it was science. It was a piece of science, and we hadn't worked on that scene, of course, because it was hours and hours of television later. Worked on that for a while, went to bed, got up, got to the set. Cristin and I just looked at each other. We looked at Kevin, who hadn't even been shooting yet, and we were like, game on. And something about the fact that we were both so shot out of a cannon and so scared because we weren't used. The show was pretty systematic, and partly because of Colin's makeup. The show pretty much stuck to its schedule. We didn't do a lot of switching around of things. That was the biggest switch that happened in the whole year, and it was breathtaking. And we were kind of so excited and so frightened, and we had been looking forward to doing the scene for so long, and we thought it was going to happen months from then. So a lot of what you see is us just like just chomping our teeth into it.
And you get that energy you mentioned, that shot of a cannon, because it's you two just going aggressively back and forth at one another.
Yeah.
So, and it works, and it's also the catalyst of what you could call, the deterioration of you and Oz's relationship, which, and honestly, it's more so just looking at it from another perspective, your perspective of how you've always hated him. And it's kind of wonderful to see someone who is, not the best mother create the spawn of Satan himself. And I mean, when you have Colin playing, I mean, Colin's brilliant.
But if anybody speaks bad of him,
there you go. Yeah, that's my son. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Did you, you saw the Batman, you saw Colin's work on it. I think there's always a difference being like, oh, I wonder, it's like from the outside view, but most of your scenes are in relation to Oz and Francis.
Sure.
Getting that day in, day out experience of seeing his method, sharing the screen together, did it live up to everything you
it went way past. It went way past. We were the luckiest two actors. It was we just immediately clicked in a way that I haven't experienced very often. And he was in his full regalia, so he was full on
with the voice.
So I never had to deal with like, there's the beautiful Colin Farrell movie star. I never had to deal with that. I met him one time. And now when I see him at events and he's like, Deirdre, and I'm like, who the hell are you? So
that's not my son.
Because he can see that for a second. I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know you. And then I go, oh, right, you're right. Because, but from the camera test, from the moment we got on the set to just like, look at our clothes and would stand next to each other so they could look at how we look together. Immediately, I just felt like, oh, game on. We're just going to be able to find this with each other. There was some way that there must have been something about him that was someone from, me from my 10 lives ago, and something about me that was him 10 lives ago, because we just went like, oh, it was like a recognition thing. And from then on, he and I, we really never talked about it. We just shot those scenes. Every time it would be like, we would talk a little bit like, do you think we should be on the floor? Do you think we should be in chairs? Do you think and we would always be weirdly compatible. It would always just be like, on the floor, of course, like, yes. And then we'd be like bullies and be like, we're going to be on the floor. But it was blessed. I felt like I could do anything to him. He could do anything to me. There was just a weird, crazy trust that was pre-verbal because we never really did talk about it very much. If we hadn't had that instant connection, I'm sure we would have talked a lot. I'm sure we would have been like, well, I guess we should be having dinner and discussing stuff, because you wanted to build in a certain kind of depth, a certain kind of complexity, a certain kind of this relationship is really complicated. So it goes way over here and then it goes way over here. But we just had a connection that, once in a while you get. Once in a while, I felt just incredibly lucky. And going in, I had no idea how I would feel. I did, people would say, Colin Farrell's the nicest guy in the world, but I've heard that one before. So I was like, I'm sure he is, but you never know, especially with number one on the set. Like it just, they can feel crazy for all kinds of reasons. They can feel like, wait, this is who's playing my mother. I'm not quite buying it. Like so many subtle things can happen that can undermine your confidence with each other. And none of those things happen. And it's partly he's like Mr. Class with a capital K. He's just such a classy guy. And he has a because he's probably been doing it for so long, but he's just a basically good person and has been through a lot of shit in his life. He just has a sense of what's going on for everybody in the room. But I do think we were lucky. I don't think he would have, he would have been kind to anyone in my position. He would have been as open-hearted as he could be. But we just happened to have a really lucky, fiery connection instantly.
I mean, it's a great experience seeing that. You mentioned this is someone in your career. You're not sure you get these moments. Every project, you don't know what it could be. But I mean, this turned out great. I know you're also involved in Ari Aster's Eddington to a degree, which
Yes,
I
I
think
am.
Ari Aster is just a brilliant
He sure
filmmaker. And
is.
I
He
have
sure
some
is.
people who I know who saw it at Cannes, and like hearing the reactions about it is just only grown my
It's
anticipation.
extreme. It's like
What was your
it really
experience
pushes
like
all
on
your
it?
buttons because it's as if Ari had spent his whole life
Mm-hmm.
trying to capture the kind of paranoia that
Mm-hmm.
he's always been spinning around this certain kind of paranoia that he works with in his movies that is so specific and so terrifying and so odd and so kind of, it's not quite like anybody else's voice. And then there's the pandemic. And then
Yeah.
there's Ari, like
Mm-hmm.
strangely poised to be the one who can say, it felt like this. And there are things in that movie that, they crack me up so much because it's like, that's exactly like, no, you didn't, there's nothing extreme about what you're writing. It was really like that. I remember a moment exactly like that in my own life during the pandemic. So it has that, it's uncanny. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
of course he takes it like
It's very heightened.
he takes it high, he heightens it, but not
Mm-hmm.
that much.
Mm-hmm.
Not that much. The pandemic pretty much came up to Ari. I
Yeah.
gotta say, like he doesn't have to tweak it very far for it to start to really become quite a horror show. So it's interesting how, yeah, the pandemic might have out Ari, and the movie's kind of about that balance of like how he's just looking and looking and looking and trying to look at all of these different people in this small town, but they all kind of personify. But it's a lot about how, I mean, I don't know what it's about. He knows what it's about, but it felt to me like it was a lot about how, because things were so heightened, because we were so isolated, because things were moving so fast, and because we were so frightened, just physically frightened of
Mm-hmm.
dying, it turned good people into bad people. It turned mediocre people into good people. It turned lonely people into crazy isolationists. It just turned all of our dials,
Mm-hmm.
and then it made for a terrifying brew. And
Well,
it did a lot of places for a lot of people. And
yeah.
so the movie isn't very exaggerated.
I'm very excited to see it. I can't wait for the world to see it. So we wrap up. I have to obviously mention the Tonys are coming up. You are
Yeah.
forever cemented in the history of the Tonys. You are self-described theater nerd. Is there anyone you're rooting for? Is there any show you've seen
Mm.
that you feel like
That's
if
a good
you can
question.
catch it before it ends, this is the moment to put the spotlight on someone who you feel earns it. I know you're very busy, so cramming in
It's
show.
so funny because I was just working on a play for the last 4 months, and so
Mhm.
I have not seen very much. So I'm the wrong person, the exact wrong person to ask. I mean, I'm dying of curiosity about Oh Mary
Oh, I've heard
and
it's amazing.
want to see it,
Yes.
but there's actually a lot of things that I've heard are fantastic.
Hmm.
So I've heard Sunset Boulevard is I think though I would spend my money on Gypsy.
Okay. I saw it recently with
Amy.
like Glary and it was just fantastic. That whole ensemble.
Yeah, I would
Great.
love to have seen that.
Yeah.
But I would just like to see her play
Yeah.
those.
Yeah.
I think but like I say, I haven't seen any of them. It's just like, what
Hmm.
would I spend my money on right now if I could go? But instead, I have to like fly to Los Angeles for more Penguin stuff. So
Hmm.
I'll have to put off. I'll have to wait until after the Tonys to go see it. And I don't care who wins the Tonys. I'm gonna still go see the things I want to
There we
see.
go. That's what we want to hear. That's
Yeah, of
obviously the
course. Because
sentiment.
it's so crazy. The more you get involved in these contests, the more
Yeah.
you realize like it's the best. There's just
It's
no.
relative.
It's
It's all
so
subjective.
often apples and oranges.
Yeah.
It's so often like these are all things we should be so lucky to be dazzled by. So it's sort of funny like, oh, I'm gonna go see the best one. But there's a lot of ones I want to see. I always want to see what Brandon writes. Yeah, I want to see a lot of things. So
Well, after all this whole Penguin madness, I'm sure you've earned the leeway to go see as many shows as you want, and
that's
I hope you
right.
get to.
That's right. That's what I could do. I just gonna go to Broadway shows as
That's
long as I'm
exactly
still
why you've done this whole career, so you can go to Broadway shows.
there.
Uh, Thank you so much for this. This was
Thank
just an
you. It was
amazing
very fun to
conversation.
talk to you.
I'm excited to see what happens for the rest of the award season. I know the love you and the rest of the team have gotten is more than deserved. So thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.